Hi guys, how are you doing? Good. Who did their homework? Nice, nice. Who found breakthrough in what they're dealing with at home? In the session material that we have covered? I have. I have. I had a conversation with my son this morning. My child. I won't tell you which one it is. But one of my male children, I only have two. This isn't recorded, so. Okay, my son. Okay, you got me. So I had a conversation this morning with my son who had a bullet point agenda to go over me and my husband with on his future plans. And I'm looking at him, I'm praying about my boundaries, and he goes, Mom, I've really thought about this, and this is why it's so beneficial that I move in with my girlfriend. And let me tell you why. And I went. And I'm thinking, boy, what part of our history are you ever going to think that I'm not going to take my shoe off and throw it at you? But I didn't. We held our position that we weren't okay with that. But he's a young adult. He gets to make his decisions. And there's space in our home for me to have my feelings and for him to have his. And it's okay, right? It's okay. I didn't like it, but I don't have to be okay with it. I still love him. I still accept him. He's my son. I don't have to like what he's doing. There's a big difference. And doing the material, working through that, we came up to what we are going to talk about tonight, which is allowing them to have their consequences. And I got to say to my son, I love you. I understand she's going to be Mrs. Griffith someday, and you really think that. I hope that happens for you, because I really do like the girl. But there will always be consequences when we compromise. There will always be compromises. My children live with some of my compromise decisions, unfortunately. We have a choice to either live for God or not. But either way, God will love you regardless. Either way, God will accept you into him anytime we want to repent and run back to him. We're the same with our kids. We don't like what they might do, and unfortunately, he's going to have to suffer consequences of his decision that I can't prevent, because then I walked outside of my own lane. Ouch, right? Even though I really, really do know better than him. I do this time. I really do. But it's okay. God's got him. My son can't run faster than Holy Spirit. So if I believe Holy Spirit is who he says he is, which I do, I know that he will be there before my son gets there. He will be there with every decision. Amen? Let's pray. Holy Spirit, thank you. Thank you. If you were there for us, you'll be there for our children. Thank you that you are the same God yesterday, right now, and tomorrow. Thank you that you love us so much that you're always welcoming us into relationship with you. So Jesus, as we learn more tonight about healthy ways to shepherd these little ones that you have entrusted us with, we say yes to you. We say yes to your love. We say yes to you holding our hearts, taking care of us, Jesus. We say yes to you. So I lift up Don and everything that he's going to be talking about. And I just ask that that you illuminate this information to us, Lord. In Jesus' holy, precious name, amen.
Thank you, Desiree. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us in our third week. We are covering the next, well, let's see, where am I going here? I need the second one. There we go. Back to our coffee. We first talked about conception, then of launching and leaving home, and then the second week we talked about considerations or family matters, family patterns, family history, that kind of thing. Tonight we're going to talk about what I call constructions, like how is this going to go? What are our limits, boundaries, consequences, incentives? That's our focus tonight. And so you have the material. And here's my little saying again: when faith, psychology, and common sense meet for coffee, sometimes wisdom and wonder say hello. And this was the homework from session 1. Here's 2. I know we're pulling up the wrong week's worth of material. That's what we're doing here. Can I get some help there, John? You got me? Okay. So while he's doing that, I'm going to read you a little story. Back when people read the newspaper, I was reading the newspaper, and I found this little story. It says, in October, Italy's economic minister, noting that a third of all men over 30 still live with their parents, and that the rental housing markets are depressed, proposed a tax break worth the equivalent of about $1,400 for each man in his 20s who will finally leave his mama's house. A week earlier, in Sicily, one mother publicly turned her adult son over to the police for staying out too late, and also took away his house keys and cut his allowance. The son, who immediately complained that the allowance was too small, is 61 years old. So I guess the problem's all over the place, shall we say. Let's see, are we up, John? Like, oh, I'm going the wrong way again. See, I turned this upside down. There we go. Coffee, homework. No, we're still on. There we go. No, that's last week's stuff. It's quite all right. We'll figure it out. Oh, wait a minute. That's the one we want, because I knew the coffee is supposed to be different. See? Can't you tell the coffee's different? Okay. Yeah, there we go. Now we're on it. And there we are, construction. Yes and no. We're going to talk about expectations, boundaries, consequences, incentives, and alternate views. So on your notes, you have this little section called yes, no, parenting. There's 2 different places in Scripture where it kind of struck me that yes, no is a pretty important concept. The first one is in 2 Corinthians. It actually says 1 Corinthians there, but it should be 2 Corinthians. Paul is talking to the Corinthians, and he says, this is a Message Bible, a little more casual interpretation. Are you now going to, then he says, well, we were going to have a bon voyage party as you sent me off to Judea. That was the plan. Are you now going to accuse me of flip-flopping with my promises because it didn't work out? Do you think I talk both out of both sides of my mouth? A glib yes one moment, a glib no the next? Well, you're wrong. I try to be as true to my word as God is to his. Our word to you wasn't a careless yes, canceled by an indifferent no. How could it be? When Silas and Timothy and I proclaimed the Son of God among you, did you pick up on any yes and no, on again, off again, waffling? Wasn't it a clean, strong yes? That's 2 Corinthians. Then the piece in Matthew, you've also heard that our ancestors were told, you must not break vows, you must carry out your vows. But I say to you, do not make any vows. Don't say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. Don't say by the earth, because earth is his footstool. Don't say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Do not even say by my head, because you can't turn one hair white or black. Although we now have the capacity to do that. Okay. But then he says just a simple yes I will or no I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. So I want you to just think about your yes and no. A lot of times with young adults, they learn to work us, they learn to persuade, they learn to passively aggress dealing with us. They want their way. Sometimes our answer is, well, we'll think about it, or we'll talk about it, or we'll see you after a month or so. And there are moments for those to be appropriate. But here's some points about yes-no parenting I just want you to keep track of. These scriptures say, avoid making promises and giving false hope. If I'm a young adult and I'm asking you for something and you say maybe, how actively am I going to work to bring it about myself if you say maybe? It's not a whole lot different than the 6, 7-year-old who's just going to say mom, 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 mom until you say yes. Quit bugging me. It's a more mature version of that, but you have the capacity, you have the resources. I'm going to go to you before I figure out a way to do this myself. So if you say, I'm going to give you an answer, I like people to give a time frame. Okay, hey, I'm going to think about this. Mom and I are going to talk about it, or we're going to pray about it, and we will give you an answer in 24 hours. Okay? That way, there's no lingering, there's no hanging out. Your yes is your yes, your no is your no. Okay? If you want to say the answer is a hard no, and we will reconsider it in 3 months, however, whatever the issue is and the intensity is, usually they're going to go get something done on their own during that period of time. But I'm just trying to get us away from giving false hope. Remember your yes, if you can do something, yes, that's stable, that's secure. They're looking for us to still provide stability and security in their lives, depending on what the issue is. But your no creates that void to fill for their own decision-making and motivation. Okay, yeah, the answer is no. They need to learn how to, just like little kids, they need to learn how to take no for an answer. It's a pretty critical skill for success. The next point, God says to us, yes, no, and not yet. I don't know that God says maybe. If he says maybe to you, he doesn't say maybe. He says one of these 3 things. Okay, I ask God for things. He says yes, no, or not yet. Sometimes what we ask God is not in our best interest. And as our Father in heaven, He knows that. Okay. Garth Brooks sang a song, "Thank God for Unanswered Prayers." Okay. More decisive parenting reduces manipulation and persuasion on both sides. You don't have to work to talk them into something, or her talking you into something. We want to get away from that. So I will consider your request, and I'll give you an answer. Remember, this is what we are willing to do. This is what we're not willing to do. We had that in the first session. And then the last point is, you reserve the right to change your mind. A small child will say, "You lied to me," if you made a decision and then had to change it for some reason. Okay? A more mature child should be able to say, "I understand, you changed your mind." Okay? But in the moment, as soon as possible, I'd like to encourage you to give them an answer so they can either build on it, count on it, or go find another solution. So that's yes-no parenting to think about. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the problem of expectations. You can see a contrast. Expectations are interesting subjects. Sometimes the information is, don't expect anything. But if they're coming to live with you, let's say they're 18 and graduated, coming to live with you, there needs to be some expectations about what these young adults should be able to contribute to your house, what their responsibilities are, what do you expect from them. Okay? If you don't give any expectations, I think you will probably get a corresponding set of behaviors. Okay? So, high expectations, the Lord calls us to be perfect. We understand that that's an ideal that we keep moving towards Christ-likeness in that scripture, Matthew 5:48. But we're called further up and further in. We're called to grow and be more sanctified, going through the process. And then on the next one down, you'll never know if you're good at archery unless you set up a target. Okay? I like the expectations of, hey, you got to decide what you're going to hit. You can't just wander. There's a bar. If the negative of this is you're giving them a bar you're trying to motivate them and have accountability. Here's what we expect from you. And then they might receive it as realistic and encouraging. And there's a weight of high expectations. Some young, oh, you're unpleasable. You're impossible. You want too much from me. Anybody ever heard that? Yes. On the other side, there's a problem with low expectations. I like this verse from Judges. It says, at that time there was no king in Israel. People did whatever they felt like doing. And if the message from the parents is, I doubt you're capable of much, there's taking away the motivation. I don't believe in you. I don't think you have what it takes. That's a terrible message to a young adult. Having demands, they're going to say, having demands is so stressful. But the real world has demands. Our job is to introduce those demands of the real world, not crush them, but try to give them a realistic bar to reach. They can see it as unrealistic and discouraging. But I think there's a tyranny of low expectations. Sometimes if you don't expect very much, I think it's actually, I won't say abusive, but I don't think it's very encouraging. Let me read the definition of that. The tyranny of low expectations is the practice of expecting less from members of a disadvantaged group, and thus implicitly encouraging those people not to reach their full potential. Okay? Can you see that if you don't expect much, you're actually being dismissive, or you're having a negative effect if you say, well, I guess we don't want to hold you too much. But this is very difficult for you. I'm sure some of you have experienced this as parents. How do you set the right amount of expectations? Not too much. That's the art. As far as I'm concerned, that's the art of parenting. How do you give them a challenge to step into? They have to manage certain difficult situations. Not overwhelming, but not too little. That's all we, especially up to 18. After 18, when we get to adulthood, I still think we have the right to have some expectations in terms of what we expect from our young adult children. So, examples. I expect you to work and go to school. Wow. Okay. Last week, many people were saying in their group, as we shared, I went to work and I went to school, okay, at the same time. This generation seems to struggle with it more. We expect you to do both. We expect you to pay your bills. We expect you to go to church with us, to follow house rules. I expect you to clean up after yourself. How hard is that? Very. Oh, that's crushing. Okay. Those are our simple expectations. Passive-aggressive behavior is a negative response to a high expectation. Okay? Remember, passive-aggressive isn't openly hostile. They're not yelling, screaming, calling you names. You give verbal compliance and physical non-compliance. Oh yeah, I'll take care of that. Yeah, I'll take those cans out. I'll mow that lawn. I'll clean the kitchen. I'm going to give you what you want to hear in the moment. Ever had that problem with young adults? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I'm not going to follow through. So I want you to bring the bar down when that happens. Right? I don't want you to continue to ask. I'm going to teach you you're asking too much. Okay? And we'll touch later on how to respond to this situation. But remember, I'll make this point several times tonight. Your unhappiness is not that important to them. It is not a motivating factor. Your happiness and unhappiness. Okay? Anybody want to disagree with me on that? Okay? Maybe it was when they were young. But at this stage in life, for most young adults, that your unhappiness is not that critical to whether they're going to make their decisions or not. Okay? So you set reasonable expectations according to your values, and we'll get to boundaries in a minute. But like boundaries, your expectations need to be age appropriate, clearly defined, and progressive. What does progressive mean? Progressive means what I expect from an 18-year-old. If you can hold that, then by 21, there would be somewhat of an increase in what I would expect from you. I don't keep it at 18 while you become 21, 22, 25. That needs to progress along with your maturity level and your competency. So it's age appropriate. I don't ask of a 25-year-old what I ask of an 18-year-old. Okay? It needs to be clearly defined. This is what we expect from you. Okay? And we'll get to that in just our next slide. First of all, gracious expectations. So you have high, low, and then we have the gracious expectations. And it says God's response to failed expectations. Well, most of us are familiar with John 21 and that lovely story where Peter has failed dreadfully. All of his promises, all of his, I'll never leave, man, I will be the guy you can count on. And then it's a crash and burn for Peter. And he's out fishing. And Jesus has been resurrected. He comes to the beach. He sees the guys in the boat. They went back to fishing. They went back to their other calling. Okay? And then Peter sees it's the Lord and jumps in the water and swims to shore. And they have this lovely moment of restoration, of grace that comes to Peter in his failure. And Jesus says, feed my sheep, tend the lambs, feed the sheep. And then he says, follow me. Okay? He's bringing Peter back to a place of being gracious, even when he's failed. That doesn't mean there's never consequences. Okay? Peter carried shame, into that moment, but Jesus forgave him and restored him, okay? And encouraged him, and Peter went on. In fact, if you read I like the end of that story. There's a lovely little moment, especially for people who feel comparative to other people. If you remember, at the very end, Peter says, Jesus lays all these things down, and Jesus says to him, and this is how they're going to hold you up when you're walking as you're old, and eventually you're going to die. He's implying that, as we believe, at least history tells us, that Peter perhaps was even crucified upside down. He was crucified in a horrible way. Okay, but Jesus is saying it's going to be rough. Your ministry is going to be difficult. And Jesus says, what about that guy? And he's talking to John. John's writing the book, of course. Okay? And Jesus says this really nice thing. He says, what's it to you? What are you worried about his calling, his ministry? What's going to happen to him? Stay in your lane and take care of the assignment I've given you. That's a moment for Peter. But Jesus restores him graciously when he fails to meet the expectations. That's the moment of that. So the AI young adult job description. Do you have that in your notes? Yep. Okay. AI is a pretty amazing thing. Okay. So you punch in young adult job description, and this is what you get. It's like a job description. Have they ever applied for a job? Well, this is the job of living at your house. Okay. And it's not all up on the board because it's in your notes, but the highlights are, hey, you're going to undertake this responsibility. The goal of this is to foster independence. The goal is your requirement is to be open and respectful to your parents. Quite a few goodies there about, what's expected from you to contribute to this family. You need to be going to work. You need to be going to school. You need to be productive. This is what we're expecting of you. Can you imagine your 18-year-old getting this at graduation? How do you think it would go over? This is what the real world does when you apply for a job. They're going to say, you have the requirements, or you have the skill set? Do you think you can carry out this task? So, AI job description. You can use this if it's helpful to describe what happens between you and children at home. But it's a clear way of setting some expectations. It's not as specific as it could be, but it gives it to you in general, just like most job descriptions do. So here's our break point. I want you to talk and turn to somebody next to you. 3 choices if you want to share something. The status of your project, and how would you rate your practice of yes, no, and then what do you think about this young adult job description? Find somebody to share with in just a minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's come back together. These are good topics for talking about more fully in your groups. And everybody, the young adult description is in your notes, I think. If everybody, is that correct? Make sure that you do that. Some of you don't have it. It's in the young adult job description is not in their notes. Some of you seem to have it. Some of you don't have it. So, okay. If you don't, you can see them at the back before you go, because I think we have other copies of it. Okay. We're going to try to get you go through faster tonight so that you have a little more question time and some group time. So next, we're going to talk about boundaries, and this guy you may know, his name is Henry Cloud. He's kind of the Christian guru of boundaries. He's going to give us a little pep talk on how to set.
Hey guys, welcome to this little bitty snippet that I want to give you, because if you're in boundaries.me, as you are, and some of you are looking at it, there's, I talk so much about all the different aspects to boundaries, and we go deep in it, as you've seen, and steps and all this. But I was thinking the other day, with all of that, sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. Meaning, I'm going to draw a picture of this so when you're reading and working through all this, you can remember what it is we're actually trying to do when we talk about boundaries and all the other lessons on boundaries.me. Here's the deal. Remember how I defined a boundary? Because we get confused. What's a boundary? You think about setting limits, or you think about doing an intervention, or you think it's a million different things, having a conversation differently. But basically, that's not the definition of a boundary. A boundary is, what did I say early on? It is a property line, all right? So if you own a piece of property, or you have a house, or you have an apartment, or whatever, there's this property line, okay? And you go to the county records office, and you have a deed to that property line that says your property is right here, and your neighbor's property is right here. Property lines define it. Now, there's another one probably over here and whatever. Now, the thing is, you live in a neighborhood, right? There's people around. So that's why we have to define the lines, because what did we say about property? It also, this deed gives you control. You get to define what happens on my property, okay? Your neighbor can't say, oh, I think you ought to paint your house purple, because not only do you have control, you also have freedom to do what you want to on your property, as long as you don't trespass, as long as you're not blowing up stuff or something that, breaks their windows or whatever it is. But here's what happens in relationships, right? Relationships, we live in community, we live connected to each other. And what happens is, on your property, and what's all the stuff on your property? Your feelings, your choices, your behaviors, your treasures, all of that stuff, that belongs to you, all right? And that works well, one more piece up here, as long as everybody is responsible for their own property. So if your neighbor is a good neighbor and they're responsible, they're taking care of their trees, for example. But what if they're irresponsible? What if they're addicted? What if they don't care about how the neighbor feels about the noise or whatever it is? What if they just let their trees grow and this big limb comes over and it falls over and it crashes in your property? See, now what we have something called, it's really interesting, in the world of faith, what the Bible calls, forgive us our what? Trespasses as we forgive others. See, now something they're doing is trespassing. It's coming over into your property without permission, and you are experiencing the consequences of somebody else not taking responsibility for their behavior. Maybe they're a rageaholic and they're not saying, gosh, I have a problem with anger. I need to call the anger, garden person and fix my anger. No, what they're doing is they're just spewing this out, and you end up with pain on your property. So what boundaries are about is defining your property and making sure that the relationships are relationships where you're being responsible. You're not yelling at them. You're not having trash fall over the fence. but also holding them accountable to what's going on over here so it doesn't affect you. Now, remember something else about boundaries. This is not a wall. These are permeable, okay? So you have, how do I draw this? You have a gate, and you can close the gate, or you can open the gate. Your neighbor walks over, you love your neighbor. They're so great, they're so nice. What do? You open up the boundary and you say, come on over. Let's have relationship, because they're bringing some good stuff, like they made you a cherry pie, or they want to give you some love or help, or just hanging out in a good way. Come on in. But then what happens if somebody wants to come in and last 46 times you were with them, they were hurtful? You go, no, I'm going to close the door. I can't do that. Sorry, last time didn't work out well. Last 46 times didn't work out well. And the boundary is taking care of your own heart, mind, and soul. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about changing anybody, because remember, you don't have control of them. You can't make them work out their issues. What you can do is say, I just want you to if you're going to continue to use heroin, then you can go somewhere else. But if you're going to treatment and get sober, I would love for you to come in because I want to help you with that. But they have to take responsibility. So a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? This is you. Own your own life and develop your yard. Come on. Your talents, your gifts, your dreams, your abilities. What do you want to do? How do you want to feel? It's depressing today. I want to get some help with kind of some mood lighting in here, right? And I want to get better. I want to get healthy. That's your life. That's your yard. And you are 100% entitled to taking care of your own heart, mind, and soul and thriving. What we want to do that is we want to do it with good neighbors. I don't want you living in outer space where you don't have any neighbors. We want community. But in community, don't ever lose control of your own property. See you next time.
He's a great boundaries guru. The book Boundaries is still the classic, Cloud and Townsend. If you're ever looking for a good book on boundaries, then it's Boundaries for Teens. Boundaries. There's a copy in the back there. Okay, Boundaries for the mailman. I mean, boundaries for everybody. Okay, it's boundaries for the dog. It's wonderful. So three basic things. Remember, I had it for expectations, but also boundaries. Age appropriate. Here's an example. No alcohol for adults under 21 years old. Don't let me catch you drinking. See, that's not an age. That's not a boundary. That's not something clearly defined. Number two, after 18 and graduated, curfew will be 12 midnight. Not don't stay out too late. What does that mean? What does that mean to me as a young adult? Don't stay out too late. Too late for you? Too late for me? Too late for the person I'm with? That has no value. There's nothing solid about that. And progressive. After 21, your curfew is 1 a.m. Nothing good happens after midnight. Okay? We want to give those things as kind of warnings, or stay in relationship, or learn from my mistakes kind of thing, which they don't really care much about your mistakes, actually. Good news, bad news. But so here's examples of setting boundaries about your house, your rules, about some very simple, basic things, okay? Which I encourage you to do. It is your house, and you need to define your rules, okay? I had a client come to me and say, it's my house, but it's his rules. Because he's moved in and taken over, okay? So now we're going to move on to consequences. Follow my outline to make sure that I'm helping you fill in all your little blanks and dots here. 4 kinds of consequences. Logical consequences. The punishment fits the crime. You haven't done the dishes, they're piled in the sink, you get to eat with paper plates and plastic forks until you do the dishes for the rest of the family for 3 nights in a row. How's that? They don't care. And that's they may not. Okay. It's but at least you're trying something. You're not just raging or being silent. You have some kind of consequence. They can take it or leave it. Okay, but logical. The point of logical consequence is it has something to do with the offense. It's not totally unrelated. Okay, you won't be able to watch or to listen to classical music anymore because you broke curfew. What? That might be important to you, but it's not important to me. Remember, it has to be important to them, and it has to be some way. If you can connect it to the behavior, it's going to have more value. That's basic to parenting in general, very specific to this. Now, a second kind of consequence. Here's a shock. If you don't put gas in the tank, it does often happen that you are stranded at the side of the road. Okay? I don't really have to give you a talk about that. Generally, it happens at least once because they want to put it right on that red line. Okay? And then, hey, I need a ride. Or some resourceful ones will figure it out. Okay? But you can warn and warn and warn until that natural consequence happens. But remember the principle that your anxiety can't be higher than their anxiety about their responsibility. Remember that? Second type of consequence there, natural. Third, you want to make sure, if at all possible, it's enforceable. And Desiree gave me this one. I think it's a great one. You tested positive. You get to sleep outside in a tent for 30 days until you test negative. What do you think about that? Okay, I think that's pretty solid, and it's measurable. Okay, because 30 days, is the number for marijuana testing at least. So, just an example. Use your creativity, but make sure it's something that you can measure or enforce. Not just, well, you need to leave home for a while. What does that really mean? That you're going to get a call and say, "Can I come back tomorrow?" Okay. Make your decision, make it clear. What do I have to do to pay my price to be back in good stead with you? And the last one is progressive. Repeat behaviors draw greater repercussions. You had your friends over and left a mess. The first time it was 4 weeks, now it's 10 weeks until you can have them over again. You get the idea? It's geometric progression. Most of you mathematicians, arithmetic means first time is 4 weeks, and the second time is 5 weeks and 6 weeks and 7. No, bigger numbers. First time is 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. Okay, that's geometric progression. If you get a DUI the first time, you get consequences. The second one is not the same as the first one. Okay, I hope nobody's had that experience, but even the court system does not work arithmetically. There's a greater consequence for a second offense. So sometimes you need to think about that in terms of your house rules. So 4 types of consequences. Now let's talk about incentives. Incentives, I think, get a bad name. Internal versus external incentives, that's the first one. I have a little slide on that. Extrinsic incentives, or external, are those that originate outside the mind and the body of the person. You can read this. These can be positive, like a reward, or negative, like the threat of being removed. Offering money or a new job title are extrinsic incentives. Intrinsic are motivations that relate to internal thought and feelings of the individual rather than external pressures. Like the feeling of pride, feeling of doing good work, praise and encouragement, a great way to enable intrinsic incentivization. So it's important to remember those 2 types. Some people, words of affirmation people, big on the incentive that you are happy with me, you're praising my work, you're noticing it, you're reinforcing it. And as Christians, our incentives to follow the Lord and walk with the Lord are largely intrinsic. But He does incentivize us, if you think about it. Peace, when you walk with the Lord, that's an incentive to keep walking with the Lord. Yeah, there's to be with a minimum of shame and guilt about my sin because of what He's done. That's an incentive to keep walking with the Lord. He does incentivize our behavior, that we are rewarded. They're just intangibles, really, more often. So that's the idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic. The second concept is called the illusion of choice. And I don't have a separate slide on that, so I'll just talk about it. The illusion of choice is creating options in order to reduce oppositionality. The oppositional 4-year-old, if you say you need to wear those pants and that shirt, the oppositional 4-year-old says, no, I'm not doing that. Okay? He's going to feel strong and powerful to resist what you've told him he must do. So you're going to be assertive and tell him what to do. The illusion of choice is you can wear any of those 3 pants, any of those 3 shirts. I don't really care. Oh, you don't really care? Because my point is that as a child, I read you about what you want, and I'm going to demonstrate that you don't have the power to control me. So the illusion of choice is creating situations in which I really do not care which choice you make, but I set up the field. I set up the options. Okay? Now, I'm not guaranteeing you that an oppositional child that will work, because opposition is a very difficult thing to work with. Okay? But the illusion of choice, but the key to it all is that you have to play very flat, very neutral. They will learn to read what it is you really want them to do. Okay, you have a child like that? Anybody have one like that? Okay, they learn to. You're not saying it, but I know what you want. You have to set it up so there's no incentive to push against you. The incentive is to figure out what do I want and make a choice, because you're not playing the game with me. Follow me? So the illusion of choice. The third concept is called funneling, and you have a nice little. Happy little colorful chart in your notes about this. Whoops, this one. Funneling. Here's what I call funneling. Your young adult comes to live with you. You're not going to go to college or trade school. You're only going to work a few hours. Your rent is $600. If, however, you decide to go half-time and you're still working a little bit, then it's $500. Full-time? And still working a little bit, $400. What about $300? What do I have to do for $300 rent? Well, you actually have to go to college full time and work more than 30 hours. Which deal would I take? Can you live with any of these deals? I mean, we're trying to funnel the choice to the one we think is most productive or has a better chance for success, but you still have to set it up so, hey, any of those choices. Again, you're not going to activate the oppositionality. What's the deal? Well, here's the deal. If you're going to live with us, you have choices. Okay? I'm not going to make you do something, but if you're going to live here, this is the deal. That's what we call funneling, what I call funneling choices. You can apply this to a number of different things, but this is a very common example of what do we do when this young adult graduates from high school, is trying to make choices in their late teens, early 20s. Okay? We'll talk later about what you might want to do with that money that comes in the door with rent, or what you do if you don't get it. Okay? But you get the idea, funneling choices. Back up here is the incentives, and I like this little video because remember the first time we met, we talked about reinforcing the completion of things. You're going to bring reinforcement. You're going to bring positive response, not just the starting of things. Young adults are famous. I'm going to go to school. Okay, great. And then in 6 weeks, they stop going to school. You're going to reinforce the completion of something if you're going to incentivize it. So let's watch this. It's actually economics.
What is an incentive? Incentives are rewards and punishments that motivate behavior. Incentives are everywhere. To better understand this critical economic concept, let's turn to an example from 1787, when the British government hired sea captains to ship convicted felons to Australia. The conditions on those ships were awful. On one voyage, more than a third of the men died, and the rest arrived beaten, starved, and sick. The public was outraged. Newspapers called for better conditions. The clergy appealed to the captain's sense of humanity, and British Parliament passed regulations requiring better treatment of these prisoners. Unfortunately, those attempted solutions simply didn't work. The death rate remained shockingly high. But there was one economist at the time who came up with a novel solution. Instead of paying the captains for each prisoner who embarked to Australia, the government would pay the captains only for the prisoners who arrived alive. Overnight, the incentives of the sea captains changed. The survival rate of the prisoners shot up to 99%. As one observer put it, economy beats sentiment and benevolence. So as you can see, incentives are a fundamental economic concept that help us predict human behavior. But they aren't the only fundamental concept. To learn
because it's reinforcing, it's not all the good intentions, it's, hey, can you deliver them alive, then you're going to get paid. Think about the application of that to your young adult. It's when you finish something, that's when the reward should come. That's when you can give lectures or try to motivate, but we need an experience in which, oh, I finished my class, here's my grades, now here's your reward for accomplishing something. Not just the startup, but the completion. So that's what incentives are about. And back to my little list here, back to incentivizing the 5 key competencies. Fill in your blanks here: initiative, motivation, industry, responsibility, resilience. Remember, those are the things we're trying to reinforce and make stronger in these young adults. Even those that are, away from home, that you have a good relationship with, remember, we're not trying to increase their dependency, we're trying to support their independency. But the last little circle there, especially self-directed, non-prompted behavior. Instead of, I have to tell you to take out the trash, if I'm going to incentivize you, it needs to be an incentive that you have done this without being told. You have generated that behavior, you know it's yours, you finished it. What a wonderful experience as a parent. Oh, you got that done already? Thinking that somehow my prompting or my reminding was the magic that got it done. We want to get away from that and have them internalize that it's my responsibility, I took care of it. Okay, that's the goal we want. So the next one is leveraging young adult natural self-interest. What in the world does that mean? They want what they want, and you hold the key. Okay? Remember, not interested in how unhappy you are, how happy you are, how mad you are. None of that matters. I want what I want that serves my purpose. Yes, they're self-centered. It's not called them narcissistic. It's a normal state of self-centeredness that 99% will grow out of, but they want what they want. Rent to Lead program. Somebody, he's not here tonight, but in the small group the first week, he created such a program, and I'm a big fan of it. Rent to Lead program, we're all familiar with lease to buy real estate. Rent to Lead program means that $400, $500, $600 you're collecting, we're going to hold on to that. We may take a little bit out if you don't clean your room, because your room is $400 uncleaned, but if you clean it, you get a $50 kickback. Okay, if you don't clean it, then it's still $400. Okay, because we have to pay for the maid or mom. Okay, in other words, you can save $50 by cleaning your room every month. Okay, but that money, you can do this either openly or you can do this surreptitiously. I've had it work either way with clients. We're saving that money, we're setting it aside, and suddenly now we've reached the threshold, you have $5,000, here's your first and last and cleaning, and you are on your way, okay? Rent to Lead. We've collected the money, and hey, this is your money actually. We're gonna kick it back to you, we're gonna help you move in. Good luck, son, make your way in the world. Could he crash and burn? Yes, but is he gonna save his $500 a month? Tell me how many are going to save their $500 a month. Not going to happen. I have concerts to go to. you know, I have things that I need. So if you don't have to do market rent. You're not $1,200, $1,300 for a room around here. That's what you're talking about for market rent, to go find a room in somebody else's house. It doesn't have to be market rent. But I don't think it should be 100, 200. You have to find a number you're comfortable with, then set up an incentivization program that says, hey, it's in your best interest in order to pay this money, and then you get a kickback. So what does win the Wi-Fi mean? This is the mom's note. It says, today's Wi-Fi password can be unlocked by texting a photo of a clean kitchen to mom. Said photograph must contain 1 box of crackers on the counter by the stove to prevent reusing any previous photos. Thank you for playing, and may the odds be ever in your favor. What a genius mother. That is, talk about leveraging your self-interest. What is going to motivate more than that? Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Leveraging their self-interest to incentivize the behavior. They want what they want. You need to get certain responsible behavior out of them. That's what that's about. Okay. Now, you tell me about incentives, and people say, well, incentives, that's so economic, or that's so behavioral psychology. But tell me how these things work. Tell me which one of these are effective. Have you employed any of these other methods of trying to get responsible behavior? Okay. How does that, these approaches improve the relationship between you and your young adult? Okay. There's a diminishing return after time. Yeah, I've heard that all before. Yeah, you're mad. You're always mad. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm saying is you have to lose control to try to get a little bit of behavior, movement from them. That takes your peace away. Why do they have the power to get you to lose your peace of mind? I don't think anyone should have the power to get you to lose your peace of mind. Okay? These methods are natural because we want a response in the moment. And remember, when they're young, if we get mad enough, we'll probably get some short-term response. Remember, short-term versus long-term. You'll get a short-term response, but you're actually setting up a long-term pattern where you have to use more and more intensity or frustration or scolding or yelling or raising or any of these other things in order to get that behavior. So if you don't like the idea of incentivizing, try these and tell me how these work, and then compare the two for me. What works instead? I was thinking about this. House incentives. If you're at work, I looked up a list of things that work does to incentivize their employees. And then I modified the list, okay? So work gives you bonuses, unexpected blessings for showing industry or resiliency. In other words, hey, you didn't see this coming, but you did a great job with that, and we want you to have this bonus. Really? That's how the system works? Profit sharing. You want to help lower the utility, the food, or the fuel costs? Earn a kickback. Okay? Our electric bill is $200. If everybody works together and we bring it in under $150, there's $10 in your pocket. How's that for an incentive? Okay? Stock options. You can earn equity in a car, a gaming system, of course, to take with you, okay, when you go. But can you earn equity in something at your house if they're paying into it and using it? Think of a way to do that. Yeah, part of your rent is going towards buying your car, so that you have a skin in the game and you have some ownership of your car. Generally, they will take better care of it than if you hand it to them. They have a skin in the game. Employee recognition party, grad party. We'll give you praise if they're open to that, if they're responsive to that. You're just going to recognize their success. Professional development. Hey, take time to go to that career class, or you've earned it. Mom and I would actually like to pay for you to take that additional training. that encourages the behavior of moving forward in your career. Surprise them with that. Flexible working arrangements. If you're steady and strong and you take care of it, hey, yes, you can wait one more day on that. We trust you now. You're competent and reliable. We can give you some flexible work hours. A wellness program. How about a gym membership? Helping with the co-pays, a stop smoking program, or a new tattoo. I'm just kidding about that. Gross. I don't think we would see that as a wellness program, but they're big on tattoos. But tuition reimbursement, you can read that one. A retreat. Hey, you guys have done really well. How about a road trip? Volunteer time. You want to go on a missions trip? Let's make that happen for you. What a great reward for contributing to the family. Gift cards, a recognition for completing something like we talked about before, or just a random love bomb. Okay, hey, I was thinking about you, and here's this card. Now we'll talk about this next week. If you have an addict, if you have an alcoholic, you do not give cash. Okay. I just thought of one the other day. I thought for somebody who just had a question earlier tonight. How about a gift card for a barbershop? Okay? Hey, you may never use it, but it's not cash that you can go do something else with. It's either use this for this purpose or not. Okay? So, but you can be very creative with that. There's all kinds of things you can do with that. Subscriptions. What matters to them? This app that they pay for, or Netflix, or Spotify, or something like that. You want to bless them? Hey, you're doing a good job. Here's something. We want to take care of that for this month for you. So you have requirements, but you also are bringing blessings. Sound like God? Requirements and blessings? Entertainment. They are always looking for concert tickets, theme park. And you don't have to pay the whole cost of stagecoach or something, but you say here's a piece of it, because those are the things that are important to them. Now you're not trying to reinforce irresponsible behavior. You're just trying to bless them because they're taking care of their business. That's a whole lot better than nagging, blaming, scolding, labeling, crying, guilty. Okay? Give it a try. All right. Here's your time for a heart check moment. It says, since we're free, this is an interesting piece out of Romans 6. Most of us are familiar with the grace abounds scripture, but in the Message Bible, it's, since we're free, is it true that we can do anything that comes to mind? Hardly, says the Message Bible. Okay? No, God, just because we're free and we're not bound to sin doesn't mean we're free to do whatever we want. God doesn't take care of us that way. Do we want to take care of our kids? No, you're not free to do whatever you want. Okay? But take a minute by yourself, consider the love of God that clearly defines the limits of our behavior for our own benefit. Ask Him for forgiveness for our shortcomings. Receive His grace. Pray for wisdom, courage, faith, and love. We'll take a minute and do that. Then we'll go on. What am I doing for time? Pretty good. All right, we'll keep moving along. We have a few more things to cover, and then we'll have some questions tonight. Make some space for that, and then our groups. Okay, how are we doing? Everybody hanging in with me? Okay, a little bit more. So, this is what I call the volleyball court. I think about the volleyball court as a way of, Henry Cloud uses the boundary line of the house. I like the idea of the volleyball court specific to parenting, because it defines the parameters and it specifies the consequences. Okay, you can hit the ball any way you want. High, low, soft, hard, curved, doesn't matter. It just needs to go inside those lines. Okay, if it's outside those lines, you lose your serve, you lose the point. You know, that's not acceptable. But I'm not going to micromanage your every behavior. You get to make choices within this. But this is the objective, that you're going to hit it inside this court. So here's my little saying about that. Your volleyball court. The space in God's kingdom, under your roof, where your adult children can exercise their free will to make their life choices in response to your clear expectations, your boundaries, and your consequences. So you can just keep that in mind, the volleyball court. Okay? That's a good way to remember that. Expectations, boundaries, consequences. All right. Now, I had a little fun with this. I was thinking, sometimes we just love, and we need to have a little different mindset. So I was thinking of these 6 alternate paradigms or careers. If you could get yourself into the mindset of these, what would it be like in your parenting? So the first one is a trades journeyman. And then I'll just go through them quickly. Swim instructor, drill sergeant, greenhouse grower, sales manager, athletic coach. So what would they say? Trade journeyman, I will pass on to you the skills you need to do this job right. Have that kind of mindset as a parent. The second one, the swim instructor, I will teach you to swim so that you do not drown. Okay? We swim in what kills us. We learn to swim in what kills. The drill sergeant, I don't care if you like me, I am preparing you for war. Maybe some of you have that personality, that mentality. Okay, there's room for that. Gardener, it's time for me to plant you in the ground so you can really grow. How's that? Sales manager, if you meet your quotas, you'll earn a bonus or a promotion. That's on the back of the incentive material. Okay, but that might inspire them. And the athletic coach, I'm going to push you in practice to prepare you for the next big game. So think about maybe one of those alternative parenting paradigms. Which one of those could you take on? Okay, it's not just loving you; it's really having an intention to give you what you need to go be successful. And then our last little thing tonight, I was thinking about leaving home. And I was thinking about how these two are actually quite similar. It's a major life cycle event. You anticipate it within a window of time. If it's too early or too late, there might be problems. It might be painful, at least for one of the parents. Stressful on the child to leave the comfort of their nest, their womb. The umbilical cord must be cut, and it's necessary for growth and health of both mother and child, subject to possible complications, so it's not without risk. May need intervention if the natural progress fails, and the feelings of joy and hope and love and relief come with a whole new set of fears for parents. So think about full circle. It comes around again. Okay, and there's our discussion questions. We'll go to those in a minute, and then, but first we'll take some questions here. Let's see, I'll go back to leave it right there. And I think Desiree's got a microphone for anybody to ask a question. We can make some space for it tonight in ways that we haven't been able to in the previous week. So, what can I help you with tonight?
You mentioned in the first or second week that our kids' generation has the highest levels of stress and anxiety. How,
Yes.
how do we as parents help our children in those areas? They've already launched, they're living on their own, but they're expressing to us their stress and anxiety. How do we navigate that?
Yeah, you come back next week. No, you just. We're going to talk a lot about mental health next week, but it's real. I mean, I'll give you some numbers next week about how this generation has been impacted much more so than previous generations. How do you help them? It's hard. My boomer generation, it's like our first response is mostly suck it up and deal. You know, you know, it's not very empathetic. And I think we can taper that down. I think we do need to have empathy, as we talked about with authoritative parenting. I want to make that connection, but I can't take all the load off you. You have 2 kids, you have a job, you've got financial problems, and you're anxious about your future. We've all been through stages in life where that happened, and found a way through. So I think we can take some of the responsibilities off for, I'll talk about this next week again, for the right reason for a short period of time. But we don't want to foster long-term dependency in order to remove the responsibilities from the young adult. As far as anxiety is concerned, well, they really are the anxious generation. There's no doubt about it. What are the reasons for it? We won't even be able to go into all the reasons for it, but it's kind of understood. And I'll talk more about it next week, but one of the paradoxes is that my generation, boomers, are criticized that they didn't go to therapy, they didn't tell people their problems, they kept it all inside. Okay, this generation is out there. Okay, I'm going to post it. Okay, yeah, I'm going to tell everybody how I feel, and then I get support from all the little likes and all that kind of stuff. And my generation, for the most part, very uncomfortable with that kind of putting it out there for everybody. Okay, so one of the questions I have, and I wrestle with these kind of questions, is like, is it really true that they're more anxious, or are they more expressive about how anxious they are? Certainly, stressors are different for each generation. There's no doubt about that. And the stressors are high, but how do we help them with anxiety? We listen. I mean, for one, you listen and you validate, but you and you don't. You can work on not blaming or not reinforcing the shifting away from the responsibilities. I think sometimes listening and saying something empathetic is really the best we can do. We'll talk next week about a full mental health crisis and a breakdown and what do we need to do in those kinds of moments. But understand that the anxiety is often quite high for this generation. That's why they have grandparents to watch the kids, right? Yeah. Anybody, other questions that we can address? Yes, please. Janet.
Yeah, I took a lot away from like the house incentives, but where I get stuck is some of like the common, like this is just the bare minimum expectations that aren't being met. So we go to the other page where it's the frustration, the grumbling, or the annoyance.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just like, do we incentivize or show those incentives to begin with when we're seeing them do it, even though we've asked, to recognize that, to build them to want to continue to do it?
Well, we want to, again, incentivize things that are done without being prompted. So that's one thing. Okay, if you have, let's say you have 5 things to do 5 days out of the week, that's 25 things. I would want to incentivize 23, 24, 25. If you get them all 25, that's extraordinary. If you got 23, you're in the ballpark. That's an A-. You're still doing pretty well. I'm not going to nag you and complain that you failed to take the trash out one time. If the dominant pattern, at least 90-95% of the time, is you're carrying them out successfully without being prompted. So then I would say this is what you've earned. I mean, we set up a system where you have internet, or you have access to vehicle, or some other, whatever the reward is that matters to them. Okay? But if they don't do it, I go over in my little chart if I have to, or I take note and say, you know, that's a time when you didn't have to do it, but I'm doing it now, and you came up short. If you only have 22 out of those 25, I'm sorry, it's been a rough week. Try again next week. That's just an idea. You can modify that as you want to, but I don't like to incentivize perfection or nothing. You know, it's progress in a direction towards the completion and the being responsible for your stuff, because none of us get everything perfect. So I think that's too high a bar. But go ahead, please, Michael.
Okay, so how would you go about implementing this? You've done it in the past when they were younger. Now we've got 3 adults, and then we got grandma living at home, which kind of, and which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah,
And,
does grandma pull her weight?
Well, grandma pays for some things that we've been trying to say, Grandma, we appreciate you doing this, but they need to take this on.
Yeah.
Use your money for something else. I don't care. It's her money, whatever. But what's the best way you feel moving forward to say, okay, we've taken this class. I'm going to blame it on you guys. No, I'm just kidding. But how would you say implement these rules? It's beyond a chore chart. They're 18, 21,
Right.
24.
Yeah. You got a point there. First of all, if you go home and you make rules, it makes some changes, and it impacts their freedom or their life negatively. They're going to say, we don't want you to take any more classes. Okay. How would you implement that? So, okay, what does it take? We talked about the sort of levels: 18-year-old, 21, 24. What are the expectations for a 24 that are clearly different than for an 18-year-old? Okay, and you can delineate what those are. But what are the things that they want? Is it your rent is tied to your completion of tasks? You can do that. You say, hey, if you do all your stuff, your rent is X amount of dollars. Okay. If you come up short, your rent is higher, okay? Or the reverse, it's a different kind of behavioral approach, is that your rent is $400. You did all your work. You almost every day. You took care of your stuff without being prompted. Here's your kickback on the rent, okay? You got $50 coming back because you did such a great job this month. Okay? Now I know how the system works, okay? My rent can be $350 instead of $400 if I take care of my stuff. But the point is to get away from the nagging and the begging and the reminding and the power struggle that you can't win. Set up some kind of an incentive system that, because what I want is one brother looks to the other brother and says, hey, how do I get that? Okay. Well, I have an idea. This is heavy on the front end of strategizing and setting up a structure. You got 3 adults in the house. You're going to have to do some work to lay down a program, and it won't be foolproof at first. It's going to take some modifications, but you can start somewhere.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
What if they refuse to pay?
What if they refuse to pay the rent? Okay. First of all, are the two of you on the same page about the sitting down and saying this is how it's going to go, and you need to think through ahead of time what's going to happen when you don't have it paid, okay? Have you thought through 30-day eviction notice? Okay. Some parents are saying, no, can't do that. They're going to be under a bridge. I can't live with that. Oh no. And especially if there's grandchildren involved, that's just really becomes difficult. But if they're not going to pay, then I certainly would reduce the comforts in every other way I could. Okay. There are no extras for you. We're going to shut off the internet. Only mom and I have that'll incentivize a gamer. I can tell you that, okay? Because that's what they're want a free deal. You know, I can game as much as I want and not be productive. So I would go after the thing that's critical. Some of them again are not going to give you much information there. I don't care. All right, well then we'll figure out something you do care about. Okay, but it's your choice. It's either this or that. If you want that, you need to do this. But I'm not mad. I have to deliver the goods. Right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that answers your question. It is difficult if they've already put down their roots that they haven't had to pay, and now you're going to impose a system where people do have to pay here. Why would I do that, Mom, Dad? Okay? What kind of parents are you? My friend his parents doesn't make him do that, okay? So, but you've heard that since they were 13. So, you're those parents. Okay. Other ideas, other things to talk about next week? Are going to talk about chemical dependency, addiction, alcoholism, those kinds of significant issues that make it more complicated. Plus the mental health issues and a few other things that make it more complicated to facilitate a launch of your young adult child. Yes, sir. Question? Yeah.
Just a brief question. Is there going to be an extension to this classes after the 4 weeks? Can we go 6 or 8 weeks maybe?
Yes, Don.
Yes. I don't. What's the extension? What, 45 and over? Okay. I don't know what to say to that. We'll have to discuss that. First of all, it is a good place to tell you your feedback is really welcomed. This is mostly an experiment, just to see if there was an audience for this and see if it was helpful. But please give either feedback to Desiree or Ann, or send me a little email. My email is myriadacounseling@verizon.net. I always say I took so long period of time to think of a very creative name, and I came up with Myriada Counseling. So it's easy to remember, okay? myriadacounseling@verizon.net is confidential. But tell me what didn't work for you. Tell me, I want to know the negatives too. Tell me what didn't work, what's not, what doesn't make sense to you. I'll try to do what I can to answer those emails. I do better with emails than phone calls out of my practice. So, but extension, I don't know where do we need to go from here. We'll talk next week.
Maybe more depth
More depth.
in each of these subjects, maybe.
Well, specific interventions are difficult because every situation is different, but we're giving some general principles about things. And then I really want you to ask the Lord, creativity. If you have the principles right, let's just be creative about this. And you could have some successes, and there's going to be some situations that don't go well. But the goal in mind is that they would launch to be productive adults that hear God's voice more than yours. Okay, so let's.
So I forgot to let you guys know, we included a breaking generational curses prayer in your packet tonight. Feel free to go home and pray that over your kids, pray that over each other, whoever you're doing it with, say it out loud. I think we're going to include some other prayers for next week. We're going to give you guys as many tools as we can to take these concepts home and start making the changes at home. With Holy Spirit, you guys have power to take back your home, to take back your children, to take back peace in your home. So if you need other tools, please let us know, and we'll do as much as we can to get that to you guys. But you guys are dismissed into your groups.
keep it warm this week. Cindy's gone. How are you?
Write that story out for me and send it to me so I can use it.
Someone lose a pencil or a pen?
Probably.
All right.
Great work, thanks a lot. We got a little rough start on that. Yeah, sorry, I'm on the wrong set. So.
Okay, then you're done.
That's how I knew. So next week, still send it to Ann, she'll send it to me. It doesn't have a copy of the links. You just read it here, sign up here. Unless I.
Oh, does it really? That's a beautiful area. All place I died for, I'm a lousy.
Oh, they can do this in Tennessee. They won't.
Cynthia's in Ohio.
Robert.
Thank you.
So I guess that's it. Yes. Yeah, they're there for 3 months. They own another home over there.
Like,
This is their longest stay. They're in our small group too.
yeah, the great people, he's on that Friday.
Okay, so everybody kind of gets around. Well, excited, everybody's here. Everybody think they can make the last one next week?
Yeah, we'll be here.
All right. Cool.
What's your compensation?
Oh, the battery is right. Okay, yeah.
Can you pass that around?
Take
I
it
want to take a picture of it.
I put it on Amazon.
I feel like.
Probably get it on Amazon, right? Yeah. Yeah, or you can get it sometimes.
If I think it's expressive,
Is it? That's good.
Lot of stories.
Oh, I
I
didn't know.
mean, you can tell them.
So he has other ones. Oh, yeah.
And he has their own-
Radio program?
and then they don't even, the idea of how to set up hybrids.
New Life Life, he has his own. He and Townsend.
So I think that's a good point. I'll have to try to be more specific
I
about it.
didn't know. I heard the name.
Mark, you want to?
So tonight is another night of material.
And it's Christian too.